Hey, welcome back. I'm here with Wayne in our new setup on Riverside. Side by side, we can now go ahead and interrupt each other here on the Ball and Breakfast podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you've tuned in the last month or so, we've covered almost nothing but football, whether that be, NFL offseason or multiple rounds of drafting, doing mock drafts, doing a fantasy draft last week. If you missed it, check out our vault. It's there. While you're there, if you're on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment, do the same on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, wherever you're at. We always appreciate it. And we'll definitely go back and forth with you. For the purposes of tonight, unfortunately, we are doing a quick stock take, not even a month into the season in the MLB on our Chicago White Sox. And so far, things are just not looking all that pretty. Wayne, I'm just going to kick it over to you to kind of frame the session and talk about whatever's on your mind concerning our Chi Sox.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you, Pat. No, for sure. It's a love-hate relationship. I think I've told some ex-girlfriends this actually before, that sometimes, I feel sometimes how the White Sox are performing, and right now I'm not feeling too good. It's all that inflation talk that we've been having with Costco but I mean, the good right side is that, hey, the Bears are going to be drafting, fairly high, and there's a lot of awesome prospects there. But, apart from that, man, the White Sox, it kills me. I want to cheer for them so much. They have all the talent on paper, right? But when they don't actually perform, then all that talent that they've had and have garnered through the past couple of years, all this rebuilding, it always just feels like we're constantly going to be thinking about the next rebuild now, which could be happening sooner rather than later. We can definitely try to put the blames on certain people. Obviously, the front office, Jerry Reinsdorf, the players too, obviously, since they're the ones that just aren't performing. There's so much blame to go around for me. And, I definitely look to the top. Some of the bad decision making. I do remember when the White Sox did make the playoffs, there was so much excitement. They had Rick Renteria as the manager. And this is definitely where I think things fell off, at least during this current run for the White Sox, was firing Rick Renteria, putting in Tony La Russa, putting that, it's basically like getting rid of like your current girlfriend or something and getting back with like a crazy ex. Or maybe like the one that got away, but it's maybe like this whole J-Lo Ben Affleck type of thing, like going back like 20 years ago and getting back with them. So I feel like that's kind of what it's been since we fired Tony La Russa. Pedro Grifol, I don't know if there's any too much. It doesn't seem like he's doing anything necessarily wrong, or he's not making like right decisions. I feel like he's making like okay decisions here and there. Apart from just not playing like Diekman, I think it'd be the only thing, like the most awful relief pitcher in baseball. But it definitely, at least for this current team and roster, the firing of Rick Renteria and getting Tony La Russa, I think has been the worst thing you could possibly do. And now it seems like, I don't know if it's the players and obviously the trainers as well. Like the players have just keep on getting hurt, right? So it's kind of hard to have to for the players to actually perform when they're always injured. So I think that's kind of where I'm at, is the training staff or the players just not taking care of themselves, and then getting rid of Rick Renteria and then bringing in Tony La Russa. I think all those decisions have kind of led to this where we're at right now as the White Sox nation.
Yeah. Agree to all of that. Off the bat, I feel like I'm glad you brought in some history to kind of frame things up, just as far as like where we think we've come from the strides we took in 2020 and making it to the playoffs the first time in a while after the rebuild, having a solid 2021, taking the division and unfortunately getting bounced in the first round with Tony kind of at the helm and everything else like that. But to me, this is just very simple. And, the fact of the matter is at some point as an organization, as a franchise, like you have to drop the hammer. You have to come over the top and exceed all expectations in how you develop a roster, how you really fill it out, how you bolster it over time. Like we just thought that, hey, we're just going to, draft some really high prospects, make some trades for some really high prospects. We're going to, be a little creative here, kind of like the Atlanta Braves, and extend them off the bat. I think for most of us, we're like comfortable with that. Like, yeah, I think, having this guy through, his 20s for, $10+ million is a pretty good deal, but that's not where it ends. You don't end it there, and I think that's what's really gotten to a lot of us over the offseason as White Sox fans. It's like, that's just not enough. Like we're going against the Astros, we're going against the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Tampa Bay Rays do it completely different than any of them, but they're just very good at developing players, just like, perhaps the Guardians are as well. But you look at the Atlanta Braves. I mean, they've done the same thing as us, except they've gone out and spent some money and brought in some new free agents. And again, like, going 6, 7 deep, 8 deep in the rotation, having three utility players off the bench that can play all positions in case one of your big, players go down, having a bullpen that's a mix of young arms and some veterans. And, you acquire a closer at the trade deadline. It's like, we do a quarter of that, we do a third of that. And we think, okay, like, because, everyone's really hot over these 4 or 5 guys that we consider our, our top billing players, like we're going to be okay. And, we can just have 3 starters that we bill as top, frontline starters, and we'll fill out the rest with free agent, 1-year deal pickup kind of, guys, and that'll be okay. And it's like, who are you fooling? At this point, you're not fooling anybody. And if you're going to go out and spend the 7th, 8th most money in the game, like, why not just toss an extra $20 million on top, drop the hammer, and that's what we've been talking about all off season. But a lot of the concerns coming into this year, when we had that last talk about where we think, the standings would be for this year and where we thought the Sox would place, I had some hesitancy just as far as like, I don't feel good enough to put them first. Like I like a lot of the guys, but I just in general just don't feel good enough because the executive team, the ownership, they didn't do enough to make sure I felt protected in the sense of, hey, what happens if we lose Moncada for a couple of weeks, or what happens if Tim Anderson goes down for a couple of months, and all of a sudden now we're in that situation and we're turning our heads left and right. And it's like, everyone was like, doing backflips. So we got rid of Lurie Garcia as far as like this utility player. It's overpaid, but like, who did you back him up with? Like Romy Gonzalez, like that guy is a complete bum. He's a minor league player at, through and through. He's never going to hit that extra level. Like, and we can't just expect him to replace, the type of production that a major league second baseman would have, or an extra major league right fielder would have. And, that's the difference between us and, the Minnesota Twins at this point, because they went out and actually did that. They went and got Michael Taylor in a trade. They got Kyle Farmer to back up, Correa with injuries. And, they've added 2 to 3 extra starters over time over the last couple of years to have a 5-man staff, but then actually have 3 guys behind them that are also capable of starting ball games, and they're waiting on Chris Paddock to come back, after his injury. So all this to say, I kind of know who I'm putting a lot of this blame on to kick it off, but to me, it's ownership, executives around the board, but it starts with Jerry, because I'm sure that's where Rick and Kenny and all the other folks are taking their orders from.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think it's always been kind of Jerry. I feel like I think I read some sort of article, I forget from who exactly, but it basically said that Jerry Reinsdorf is like the luckiest owner in sports of all time. We kind of isolate those, in a way, lucky draft picks, like with Jordan, right? And also with Derrick Rose for the Bulls, from the Bulls perspective. If we eliminate, the Jordan years and the Derrick Rose years, right? It's like, what kind of player development has occurred, and has it led to certain championship caliber teams? There's been very few and far good teams for the White Sox in that sense, right? Even that 2005 White Sox that won the World Series, it was kind of makeshift. Like, to be honest, it was almost kind of happenstance that they were able to kind of get all those players that were kind of in the peak I remember, kind of recall Jermaine Dye, right? It was kind of like a good deal for the White Sox to get a player like Jermaine Dye. I think he had like a 1 year deal, and it was definitely a kind of make it or break it type of deal for him to like maybe get the second contract. So that was like one of just who could have predicted that? Like the next year, I think after they won the World Series, I think he hits like 40, like close to 40 homers or something like that. It was like an MVP candidate. So that's certainly where I feel like like Jerry Reinsdorf has looked out a little bit. I mean, hey, let's give him credit to where credit's due. Like, obviously, it's hard to win championships and World Series, but you got to go to basketball. So that's definitely where I feel like he's brought championships to Chicago, great, but how much of that was really him versus kind of the luck of the ball, luck of the lottery for getting those type of players. And yeah, you brought up kind of like the player development, I think is one thing, right? For both the Bulls and the White Sox. From the Bulls standpoint, like it always seems like it's very far in between in terms of just good quality players or maybe superstar players that they're able to draft. Maybe the most recent one or the one that comes to mind, obviously, is Jimmy Butler, of which we could not keep him and we could not surround him with, good quality talent, like, signing Rondo, past prime Rondo and Dwayne Wade. Like, what are we trying to think there? We also think about with the Bulls of Lauri Markkanen and, kind of getting rid of him, Carter, and, getting obviously like the current roster we now have with DeRozan, who's aging, and then Vucevic, right? Like all those players, they're kind of going down in terms of the prime from where they are at in their career. So it's like, what exactly like are we doing? And obviously, there's always been that funny kind of joke with Kenny Williams, right? Of signing very, very past their prime Ken Griffey Jr. as well as Manny Ramirez. Like, what exactly is this whole thing trying to do? Like, are you trying to like field like a roster from 10 years ago that you kind of wish you had? Again, like it always seems like, is it who's pulling the strings here? Is it Reinsdorf that's pulling the strings here? Is it Kenny? Like, how much input does Reinsdorf have in this? Because it feels like it's a lot if he's able to like pull out those kind of players, as well as Tony La Russa as well out there. So I just feel like they're just making it kind of idiotic moves on all those fronts, and that those types of moves I feel like set the franchise behind like 5-10 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, whatever's happening with the Bulls is the same thing that's happening with the White Sox. It's like, unfortunately, we don't, any longer live in the era where, the newspaper and WGN News is where you're going to field your source and, your sports information. Nowadays, we can go on thousands of blogs and we can go on, social media. We can, dig through, very rich analytics. We can, think of things in so many different ways. I mean, just the tools that are at our fingertips now to analyze what's actually going on. And, again, I go back to the story that came from David Sampson on, his CBS podcast, but essentially said that as an executive of the Marlins and the Expos in the past, he had talked to Jerry Reinsdorf at one point, and Jerry said, he always plays for second place because that'll bring the fans out to the stands. It allows us to be competitive, but we also don't have to go above our means to, spend too much and bring in, less profit. So it's like, with that mindset, with that attitude, it's like, dude, we're not running a Dollar General here. We are running it's a business, it's a sports business, but it's also, a team, a franchise that, brings a lot of people out to the park to support the team that's moving in the right direction. Like, unfortunately, unlike, most businesses, sports like does have a very big human element to it. And, we're the ones who are the consumers at this point. And it's just like, dude, like if you want to make some more money, nickel and diming and kind of trying to, maximize profitability and stuff, like maybe just find, another industry to break into or, kind of move more toward your other businesses that have made you an owner in the past. Cause it's like at this point, we're looking at too many owners these days coming in, spending $4 or $5 billion to buy franchises and then just going above and beyond to, field amazing talent. And, it's not always the right solution. It's not a silver bullet, just going out and spending money on free agents, but you got to be in tune with like, where your roster is at, who your peers are that you're trying to compare yourself to. So if it is the Blue Jays or if it is the Braves, you have to look at them and say, what are they doing to get themselves into playoffs, year in, year out with the young core that they established. And it's like, it doesn't take a real genius to figure that out. But, I think Hahn and, perhaps Kenny Williams are probably looking at the same things we're talking about right now and saying, like, we'd love to do that. We'd love to add like the 3 guys we had on our checklist this offseason, but we didn't get that green check mark to go ahead and do it because it would have added, 20, 30 million extra dollars to the payroll. And, just like you said with the Bulls, like going back and watching The Last Dance, just thinking about where, Pippen was at when he was a free agent. It's just like they were nickel and diming Scottie Pippen. It's like, it's nothing that, doesn't carry over to the White Sox at this point. And, it's just too bad. I'm really hopeful that at some point the Reinsdorf family just looks themselves in the mirror and goes, we've been in this game for a long time. We've been in this business, both for our White Sox and Bulls. We've experienced a lot of ups. At this point, we're just not as serious as maybe other owners might be. We don't care enough about, pouring some extra dough in just to see, some banners being hung. So at this point, like, let's sell out. Like, the economy's shit. Like, let's go ahead and like find the highest bidder, because guess what? Like, Chicago's a top 3 market in sports in the United States. And it's like, you're going to have venture capitalists, technology moguls, real estate kingpins, like all sorts of dudes are going to line up probably with, past athletes to buy, both of those franchises. And it's just like, dude, just cash out. Cause at this point you don't care enough. And, we just don't need any more excuses. And, I sure as hell, I'm not going to like trot my ass down to, the sell or guaranteed rate field to watch this sorry ass team. Cause I mean, seriously, 7-16, I mean, this is pathetic. I mean, we've gotten to a point of like all-time lows of what I expected out of even this fractured roster. I'd still expect us to be, dancing around 500 at this point. But I think blow after blow to some of our core guys and even some depth pieces, it's got to be a morale like drainer in that dugout. Just be like, man, we got no extra help going into this year. And like, hey, Tim's out again. We're down Tim for 2 months. Like, we can't be a playoff team. Like, we're down Mancada, it's like, it's just hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah. And I think I read an Athletic article about that too, about, the White Sox being like 7-16 now. Like no team that has been like 7-16 has ever made the playoffs, I believe. So it's like, okay, well, that's demoralizing, I guess there. I think there has been teams that have like gone back to like close to 500, but again, it's like, this team similar to past Bulls teams, and this is definitely where it's like, oh, is Reinsdorf, does he actually making some of the decisions or whatever? But like, if you kind of look at how the Bulls played out in their structure and how things how they work basically, and how the White Sox, it's very much the same. So it is hard not to compare them to. But yeah, like, the Bulls have also been notorious for being cheap, even during the Jordan years, right? You mentioned Pippen there, and just kind of trying to like sign 1-year deals, and even though they're making tons of money from Jordan and going, through all that, they were just trying to nickel and dime. It always felt like so. And yeah, similar thing with the White Sox. I think I also read something on the internets about the White Sox. Benintendi, he's our most, we spent the most money on him from free agency, like of any White Sox free agent ever, I believe. And, we spent, I think, $76 million on him. So it's like, wow, we've never had a $100 million contract. Again, yeah, sure. Those, having a good contract or that high of a contract doesn't always make a better team, right? But at the same time, it does kind of show, from at least the fan base standpoint, that this is a serious team. We are spending the bucks, and it really kind of, there was all these talks about Bryce Harper, bunch of pitching prospects or pitchers out there like Garrett Cole. I know, hey, some of them, I guess it's all noise, right? Who would want to come here? But you got to aim higher, right? I think that's where the White Sox are at. We are, I think, middle of the pack in terms of revenue, but like you said, we are, a third largest market, but we operate very much like a small town team. So that's definitely where I feel like there needs to be some serious consideration for the future of selling this franchise. Both Bulls probably and the White Sox. I don't know what Jerry's son has in store or anything like that, but if he's anything like his dad, it just feels like then it's going to be kind of the same thing going forth, and that does not look good or promising, I think, from the fan standpoint.
Yeah. And I mean, just from last year, attendance, counts and all that, just based on expectations, anticipation for last year. I mean, I think we were like a top 10 attendance team, when we had high hopes and a great team to put on the field. I mean, obviously we underwhelmed completely, but in the same sense, I'm sure the Bulls are the same way. If you've got a playoff Bulls team or a playoff White Sox team, that house is going to be packed every night. And I feel like there's always that caveat from the front office, like, well, if you come to the game, we'll field the team. But it's like, no, it actually works the other way. I think nowadays, we expect there to be some sort of like standard that you're going to set. And when you're telling us at the end of this rebuild that we're going for, World Series titles, that does get a lot of people excited. But then there's also an expectation like, okay, then create a World Series winner. And, just winning the AL Central, it doesn't even feel attainable at this point. And in a lot of ways, that feels like that was the only goal that they ever had, was like, maybe we can squeak in with a wild card berth, or, maybe win the division if we want to go that far. But it's like, just have some like goals, have some sort of direction. So, I mean, we just dropped another game tonight to the Blue Jays. We're now 7-17 on the year. I really have no expectations for this team this year anymore. I mean, this first month has been so bad that I don't think we're able to dig ourselves out of this kind of hole. Seriously, we'd have to go on the most epic run. And I think the guys who quoted it a couple of games ago even said that we'd have to be maybe at this point, like, 83 and 53 to win 90 games. So we got to be 30 games over 500 to get to 90. And that's probably good enough to maybe get you a wild card berth at this point. So it's just like, I don't see us climbing that mountain. And I have ideas for what I think we should do. But what do you think at this point, Wayne? I mean, what is your confidence level in us, like, potentially being competitive this year? And then, like, what would you do if you're in the GM role right now?
Man, if I'm in the GM role, like, I definitely have my staple players that I would ideally like to keep. Cease, sure, Kopech, Vaughn, maybe Gavin Sheets in there. I think he's controllable and everything. So, like, yeah, sure, the rookie deal players, but everybody else, they almost feel expendable, and see what can we get from them. Because honestly, yeah, I feel like at this point, if and that's been the whole thing, I think, with the White Sox and Bulls, is that they oftentimes go for that middle ground, right? Where it's like, yeah, we might be successful, but we're not going to go that extra yard, right, to make sure that we have everything that we need from a team standpoint. So ideally, I'd like to just be like, all right, to hell with it. Let's just kind of tank it. Sure, keep the some of the team friendly contracts in here that we have people on rookie deals, right? But then everybody else, like, see ya. I'm a lot of the players that have been injured, right? Like, what's the saying? Something about availability. Like, that's part of essentially a player's profile. Like, how good they are are they actually going to be playing? So, I know I do love Luis Robert. I'd still like to keep him. Hopefully we do that. He does, stay healthy for a season or plays like 140 games, but like, he's just way too talented for me just to get rid of him there. But at the same time, like, player like Eloy, honestly, I think is expendable there. See what the hell we can get rid of for Yasmani Grandal, and again, just kind of blow it up. Like, those were some pretty bad contracts out there. And yeah, kind of just go from there. Lance Lynn, I know he hasn't been playing that well this year. And I think he still has some value, I think, that he can give to a contender. I'm sure that they'll, see if we can get some prospects for him. Maybe Giolito. I think those players, the players that are probably around the 30-year-old range. I think those players are probably going to be gone. And yeah, Eloy for sure. So, and then see what you can get from them, build from there. And then hopefully, the rebuild won't be too far down the line, and we load up on prospects and sign a few free agents here. But that's kind of what I'm thinking, at least initially. And we'll see what Pedro Grifol can do with what he has right now. Again, I haven't seen or noticed anything that, at least the Tony La Russa standpoint of like, what the hell are you thinking yet? So I'll try to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Ethan Katz, pitching coach, I feel like, hey, I think he had like one good season, and then, or at least this pitching staff did, and then there just hasn't been anything to show of late from both like the bullpen standpoint as well as the pitching staff standpoint. And there really hasn't been too much growth, I think, for some of the players, I think with the exception of Dylan Cease. So it's like, Renato Lopez, Kopech, like they've shown promises here and there, but not the consistency level. So that's where I think he's in the chopping block. And then, we still haven't gotten our hitting down. So maybe, I know we just got a new hitting coach this past offseason, but it's like, we got to be serious about these things in the future. So player development, I'll definitely invest everything as much as possible in there, getting the right coaches and personnel there. And figuring out what's happening from the nutritional standpoint as well. Like, why are players getting hurt so much? Just kind of figuring all of those things out. But what do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, there's three guys that come to mind that I want to keep. It's Luis Robert, Oscar Colas, and Andrew Vaughn. I think everybody else, given where they're at in their careers, what they may ask for as free agents, a la Dylan Cease with Scott Boras as his agent. I just would love to think that he'd suck it up and want to be in the black and white forever, but odds are he's going to command, near top market rates, and we may as well trade him for, as much prospect capital as we possibly can. That's my only rebuttal to anything else you said. Anybody else who with a lick of talent on a rookie contract, like let's keep him around like a Gavin Sheets or something, like that's fine. That's great. You can be our, full-time DH when we get rid of Eloy or Yohan or, Tim or any of these other guys, Lance, Mike Clevenger, Lucas Giolito. So hopefully, maybe by the All-Star break, if our team is still as bad, but the talent has gotten marginally better, has gotten more marketable, like then we just start dishing and diming every single guy. But the problem is, and like what we ultimately come back to is nothing about the organization seemingly will change. So how does the approach change when we just gut our roster and start from scratch again? Like, is there any sort of like lessons, learned in this situation? Like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't go through 3 managers in 3 years, or, hey, we might get some really high-end prospects in these deals. Like, we should also keep in mind that we'll also need some money to spend on like a slew of, really good veterans when these guys become, prime level, players at the next turning point in our franchise. So it's so demoralizing because, you mentioned a guy like Ethan Katz, and, last year, we had the worst defense and the worst base running in the league. Yet Daryl Boston, our first base coach, was retained last year. We fired Joe McEwing as a symbol, Frank Menachino, et cetera. We brought in some new guys, but like, I feel like once the White Sox front office staff or the ownership falls in love with a certain coach or certain guy, they've got a job, they've got an extra contract. And it's like, is Ethan Katz just the next Don Cooper for the next 30 years? Like, I love like the horse whisperer, Don Cooper. And like, obviously like we won in 2005 and like, that was all great, but there was definitely a time period where it's like, okay, Don might have like hit his peak in 2005. Like we've now held on to him for an additional 10 seasons or whatever it was. So I'm just, I'm losing faith, and that's as like a core fan of this team now that my eyes are both like wide open, and like we went through that full rebuild, and then like we built a very solid group of guys, starting in 2020, and just no other bricks were put on that foundation to really, stabilize it. So it's like, now seeing the game at a different perspective at our ages and stuff, we're not as like blind to, just thinking that we sign a bunch of big names and we're going to be in the playoffs, like a Ken Griffey Jr. when he's 35, or a Robbie Alomar or Jose Canseco at their, last breath and stuff. Like that kind of stuff just doesn't fly with the modern day fan anymore. Like we're way too smart for that. So, yeah, this is my pitch once more. Like Jerry, if you're listening, if anybody in that front office is listening, seriously, put this team up for sale. Seriously, just put it up for sale. You don't want to win. You've probably made hand over fist enough money. The market cap on the franchise itself has probably grown since you purchased it. In the 80s, 90s, maybe it was earlier. I have no idea. Go ahead and sell it, cash out, have some fun with that, and find your next venture. But like, we just really need a serious ownership group to come in and, maybe just provide severance checks or pension plans to all the execs and coaches that have been with the White Sox organization now for 20, 30 years. Like, let's clean house, man. It's time to like just start anew.
Is there a franchise you would like to emulate to grow the roster, the team, the personnel, the front office?
Man, like, are you talking specific people or like models of organizations?
Maybe more so models. If you do want to drop names, I'll be impressed because I don't know too many of unless like they are all of a sudden like, okay, we just fired a manager for the White Sox, now let's talk about it. I don't know any pitching or bench coaches and all that, but yeah, any franchises that you would like to pick pick some.
Oh my God. From? Pick up the phone and call the Tampa Bay Rays and pluck whoever is in their, front office department as far as analytics, player development, baseball ops. Like, take the assistants, the third assistants, the interns, like however many Tampa Bay Ray execs you can pluck, like do that first. Then I'd go over to the Dodgers organization, look at Friedman's staff, look at their assistants, go one by one through that whole organization. When you're done with that, turn over to Cleveland, talk about, what they're doing on the pitcher development side, player development, pluck a couple guys from there. It's just, there are some organizations that just truly get it. And they're almost, making a mockery of the rest of the league in a lot of ways. Cause it's like, hey, look, like we're the Tampa Bay Rays or we're the Cleveland Guardians. We don't spend like, even maybe in like the top 20 organization, type amounts that you all do. And year in, year out, we are able to just nurture talent. We're able to pluck, your trash we can, convert to treasure. It's like they just find ways to convert guys into everyday Major League Baseball players. It just makes the rest of the league envious. I will do some homework on some names overall, but start looking in those directions. Even a Milwaukee is like really close by. I just like what they do. They're probably, somewhere around like the, top 15 spenders in the league year in, year out, but like just do a really good job at, they've always got a good stable of pitchers. They're able to, find value similar to like how the Rays do it. And I always feel like they win on most of their trades. So, just follow suit on some of these, more modern examples. I mean, I feel like even the Braves and Blue Jays, although I like those teams, those organizations, like they may spend at a little bit higher of a clip than the White Sox, ownership group is currently comfortable with. So maybe they're not the perfect model to follow, but if you're going to go the Rays route, you just have to have so much savvy and so much, I would say, analytical prowess to make those kinds of calls, like on some of their deals and some of the people they, pick up. It's like, that stuff's not by accident, that just doesn't like accidentally happen for 15 years. So hats off to them as an organization. But yeah, it's just, if you want to play up a little bit, like you want to play with the Blue Jays Braves, you got to spend up too. And that's what the White Sox have to do because they don't have the smarts to play on the Rays, Guardians, at times Athletics and Twins levels either.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think all those are great organizations. The Rays, holy cow, like what an epic run. I think I called it, hey, they might win 90 games. Yeah, they might win 100 now. So, wow, they've been killing it. So I would definitely agree there. Another organization I'll drop in there, the Cardinals, I think, not too far from Chicago. So I think getting that culture of, it always seems like they have those solid vets, right, that are willing to stay there for longer. With the Adam Wainwrights, the Yadier Molinas, so that they carry from one, I guess, decade to the next, right? Being able to nurture and coach up the younger players, so that's kind of how that they kind of have that generational success from decade to decade. That's something I think the White Sox desperately need. It always feels like, yeah, we might have like 1 or 2 good seasons out of like 4 or 5. But then after that, the rest are losing seasons. So I feel like having a culture of constant winning, I think, could be great. And I definitely see, the Cardinals kind of as a model organization in that front. They'll spend money here and there, but they're not just kind of like willy nilly with regards to all their money and contracts that they're giving out. So them for sure, and then. I think there's any other teams, you mentioned the Guardians. I know there's this whole thing, I guess, with even, front offices in the division. So, but even then, I think that's definitely, how is it that the Guardians and the Twins always feels like, beat us up and everything, even though we spend more money than them. So like, that's just crazy to think. So yeah, for me, it's like from the White Sox, like, if you're either gonna have to spend a bunch of money or be like one of those types of franchises, and then maybe the fans will show up then, or if you really feel like we're just gonna be frugal as hell, then you might as well go all the way and pick from the best franchises that are able to do that. So
yeah, no, I mean, I think I've said my part across the board here. I feel like, I mean, I'm not in. The funny thing is, like, here's the funniest thing is like. I'm not particularly shocked or surprised at where we're at. That's the thing. Like, yes, we suck. And yes, like this season's probably going to be a lost season, but it's like, it's not even that surprising because I think we went into this year as far as predicting this team with a lot of hope and saying like, okay, 2022 happened. It was a step back, and then there were all these reasons that we had, there was injuries, there was this, there was that, Tony La Russa, et cetera. But it's like, going into this year, without seeing enough on the positive side, like we made a lot of lateral moves. Like we lose Abreu, which I was okay with because, as much as I love Jose Abreu as like a White Sox and like what he did in his prime and everything like that, signing him at that rate for 3 years, number one, would have been like the highest annual average value probably ever given out to a free agent. But like, also, I think getting Benintendi to be stretched out over his actual prime from 28 to 33 is a better move. And Benintendi's been playing pretty good baseball. So like, I'll give him that. But like, then what else did you do outside of that? Like there was just, you lose Cueto, you bring in Clevenger, we lose Liam Hendricks. We don't really add anything to the bullpen. We we bring back Andrews, like lateral move. We already had that in the bag. It's like, so not much really like was bolstered into this team. And it's just like, again, if we run it back and we have those same injuries as we did in 22, like we're fucked because we have nobody to really like step in. Like Romy Gonzalez is not a pro baseball player. Like Jake Burger, like I'm enthused that he's having a good start. Like I want Jake Burger to be a good baseball player. I haven't seen it. So it's like, I don't really know what I can, really go through and expect. But I mean, almost the worst, team ERA in baseball. I think they're second worst in the league right now. And then they're bottom 10 in offense. So, what do we expect? I mean, could we be hitting a little bit better? Probably. Could we be, pitching a little bit better? Probably. I think bullpen is pretty fractured without a lot of our, core guys that, like a Hendricks or a Joe Kelly not really being the guy we thought he would be, signing him. Like that stuff hurts. And I don't know. I'm just sitting here like surprised that we're this bad. Like we are horrible right now, but like I'm not shocked that we're not very good,
Yeah, no, I agree. Because I think you had them third, right, on yours. I think I had them winning it all because I was definitely the hopeless romantic, I feel like. So, but I think you had them third.
I had him second. To be fair, I had him second, and I had him second because, like the Guardians, I I thought the Guardians got hot at a certain point last year where they played out of their minds to get to like the 90 win marker and higher. And it's like they were just on a complete tear to end the year. But like a lot of it didn't really feel sustainable to me because I just looked up and down that roster and just thought like, are these like all-star caliber players or they just play out of their minds last year in a lot of ways? Like I don't think the talent really matches like the output in that sense. But they also, their rotation was kind of, up in the air coming into this year. Like I liked the front end of their rotation, but I didn't really like everything in between. So I think I had the Guardians third, the White Sox second. And I think it's fair to say the Guardians and the Twins will most likely duke it out, toward the top of the division at this point. And like, I don't know, man, third place. I mean, I'd like to think that we're better than the Tigers and the Royals, but like, I don't know, man. I don't know anymore. I really don't. I don't.
Yeah, no, this is definitely I have the feeling where it's like, yeah, we got to just blow it up then. If we're we're trying our hardest and we're competing with the Royals and Tigers for last basically, or maybe third, depending how you look at it, right? It's like, well, yeah, we need to hit that redo button or blow it up button, right? So I that's just where I'm heading at, and there's got to be some movement on the front office where they're just selling the team or getting rid of some of the execs up there and everything. But yeah, this is just not acceptable, and it's hard to hope for a future when this is kind of what we see when this is our best effort, right? So yeah.
If they blow it up, let's just fingers crossed they bring in a ton of guys that just can all do what the 2020 squad did in the time that they did it. I think it took like 3 years for a lot of those high-end prospects to break in and to break out. But again, go back, look at the history, look at the tape, read the chalkboard, learn some lessons in this case. Like, what did we not do in this situation that could have made this so much better? And, at this point, I think this core just doesn't have the kind of faith it needs to really break through a lot of the barriers that have been created so far. But it's just like, we also have to come to grips with like the Hall of Fame level caliber talent we thought we had may not be 4 or 5 guys. It may just be like a Luis Robert, healthy, playing 160 games every year, maybe the best shot in that kind of, tier. But it's like, what is Eloy's like year in, year out averages, going to reflect? What is Tim going to be able to do over, 120, 130 games year in, year out? Because that's what you're getting. Moncada, I just think he's borderline average at this point. He's borderline, like, just an average baseball player. He's worth a starting role, maybe. He's worth, for sure, being part of a major league squad as a backup at the very least. But man, like the expectations have changed so much since 2019, 2020 that, I'm just hoping if we do blow it up, put the pieces back together, but then also add, some maturity, add some guys that can be leaders, that will be sustainable leaders in that clubhouse. Cause that's what made the 05 squad so great. It was not that we, a lot of those guys really were like homegrown in the White Sox way, but just a great assemblance of, guys that were in their prime, maybe just a touch past, but they also just had so much experience, so much wisdom to pass along to one another. And it's like, they all just gelled, got along, played baseball, and that's all it was ever about. And, it was great to be a part of that, toward the end of high school, college and stuff. Like, that was an awesome run. But man, that at this point, looking at the last like 30 years or so as a White Sox fan, like that just seemed like dumb luck, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it almost feels like the 85 Bears, right? I think this is how like people in the Midwest or Chicagoland area, right? We always hear about the 85 Bears, and I was born in 88, so it's like, okay, whatever. But then now I feel like, oh yeah, the 05 White Sox, that's kind of like our 85 Bears, if you're a White Sox fan, or, the Cubs, was it 16 or something, 17? So like there's all those like teams out there, but then yeah, now that they're long gone, now it's like a distant memory, and it's like, okay, yeah, I remember where I was. I thought we would might win like another one because all our players were in their prime then, right? And we got Jim Tomei traded away Aaron Rowan, all that fun stuff. But then, yeah, things just didn't work out the way that we wanted to. So, but yeah, always going to be optimistic or try to be optimistic for the White Sox here. But yeah, it's just definitely has that feelings of the 85 Bears for sure.
Yeah, no, it does. And, I'll always be a White Sox fan, no doubt. I'm not going to change allegiances or anything like that. But, like, the seriousness at which I take my fandom, it's all conditional. It all depends. You want to trot out some, like, half-assed roster? No. You want to, blow it up and go the whole rebuild route for 10 years? Like, I ain't going to one game. I'm not watching a game on TV. Screw you. So it's kind of like, you're just like begrudgingly.
It's got to be mutual.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's got to be a mutual relationship.
Yeah. At this point, I'm just like disgruntled, just like this disgruntled employee, just doesn't want to go to the office, doesn't want to go back to the, work for the company or whatever. So like,
you're quiet quitting.
Yeah, I'm quiet quitting on the White Sox. That's a really good way of putting it. So let's all quietly quit on the White Sox and see what happens. But no, this was awesome. Regardless of the situation, like I love talking about the White Sox and like what's going on and stuff. But I don't know. I mean, before we turn to final thoughts, is there anything else you want to share about the first month of the MLB season?
I mean, I know we touched about it a little bit, but yeah, I'm just really impressed by the Tampa Bay Rays, man. That team, they have relatively the same squad. I think, yeah, I mentioned before that they did 2 years ago when they won like 100 plus games there. I think they won like 85, 86 this previous season. So, and they had a couple key players that are injured. Now they're all, healthy. I did predict them, I guess, to finish second, but man, with the way that they're running right now, I'm just really impressed. And I think, yeah, the projections are, if they were to continue the same rate, they'd win like 140 games. So probably not going to happen, but still love to see that. I just wish they had a nice stadium. Then maybe more of the hometown people over there would actually, give a shit. But apparently they're not going to do that. So, but yeah, I would love to have like a team like the Tampa Bay Rays, right, playing at in the South Side, right, something like that. Some team that's kind of gritty. A lot of the players, nobody knows who they were in college or anything like that. They kind of just are grinders, and I think that's hey, that was like our 05 White Sox in a way. So just happy to see like them perform the way that they have been.
Yeah, absolutely. That team is just incredibly deep. They maximize every situation, every platoon advantage. Like they find ways to create like these multi-positional depth pieces that you match them up with the right pitcher at the right time, or you put them in the right defensive spot. Like they're just maximizing all of their potential in all facets of the game. Their pitching goes so deep. I was really concerned about the Glasnow injury up front, and like they just lost Jeffrey Springs, who was arguably their best pitcher, besides Shane McClanahan. But it's just like their stable is always 5 deep, nice and set, and they just pluck from the minors anything else that they need to fill in as far as the holes go. And they've worked on a couple of guys I've heard recently, like Yandy Diaz and Harold Ramirez. Like when they came to the team, they had good hard hit rates, good contact rates, but they just weren't putting balls in the air enough. And, they've helped with their launch angles to the point where they can actually, instead of hitting line drive singles, they're hitting, now home runs and doubles and stuff. So they just know how to like take that talent that's like marginal, fringy, average on most other clubs, finding their strengths and then just like giving them the right tweaks and the right, development points to get them to be regular, everyday Major League Baseball players, like starters in the MLB. And it's like they've got 9 guys playing every day that just know how to play baseball the right way and field the ball well, and they pitch well. And look, like they're kicking ass. And like we're kind of surprised because they're 20-3 at this point. But have they not been a playoff team the last 10, 15 years? Like they have. So there's something in their recipe that just makes a lot of sense. So I think that's a great one. At least on my end, I've got like two things because they both come out of the NL Central, but just like your Rays point, I mean, just complete awe of the Pittsburgh Pirates and what they're doing over in the Central. They're in first place of the best team in the National League based on record. Bringing in Andrew McCutchen, Carlos Santana. I just felt like, Connor Joe, guys like this, like veterans that have been around the game a little bit, bringing in some guys that have, some experience in major leagues, but also like can be good, clubhouse guys. And I feel like, bringing Andrew back is such an emotional boost for that team and for him personally. But watching some of their in-house guys like kind of rise up and start to become, above average players. Like Brian Reynolds is completely an all-star. He just signed an extension day. I think it was 8 years, 107 million about, but that's a complete discount for a guy of his talent. Jack Sawinski in center's been just a really good ball player. Brian Hayes is another guy to keep an eye on. Like he's starting to really put it together after having a couple, stumbling years as a rookie and a sophomore. But I think he's got all the talent to be, maybe a borderline all-star down the line. So it's just like, it's nice to see them, piece this all together. They've got a couple of rotation pieces, Keller and Oviedo, that are like really playing well. And Bednar's a great closer. It's just like, it's just so nice to see a team that's constantly in the cellar. We talked about it a lot in football, but it's just like for baseball, the Pirates are one of the, stinkiest organizations around. And it's just like refreshing to see them kind of play, beyond their expectations to this point. So hopefully they're just in the race for the rest of the year. And I guess conversely, I'm shocked about the Cardinals because you were mentioning how great of an organization they are, and they truly are. Like they are a stable organization that is usually in the playoffs. Like perennially, they're competing for playoff berths and further. And man, you just look around the diamond at their talent on offense, and it's like, what the hell is going on? Like they, I think for the second day in a row, they've now sat Jordan Walker. I think he sat 3 out of 4 days. I'll complain about my fantasy gripes on another note, another time. But it's just like, I think what they're doing is they're juggling this roster of really good talent too much. Like they have 5 guys that are capable of playing in the outfield every night, a couple of DHs, some multiple positional infielders as well. And it's just like every night they've got a new lineup. Nobody can develop consistency. Nobody can get, the kind of consistent looks you need to get out of a slump or to like kind of build a hitting streak. Like it's just, there's too much going on. They have to make a trade, I think, in their outfield at some point. And their pitching's just been like a complete disaster to this point. Michaelis is not even serviceable. Wainwright's on the IL. It's bad. So, I mean, the Cardinals are almost as bad as the White Sox at this point, which is just jaw dropping because they're a much better organization. So I'm looking at the Central and I'm like, man, this thing's like up for grabs. And I didn't think it was to kick off the year.
Yeah, I know for sure. I do like your mention of Andrew McCutchen there. Like I mentioned before, for the White Sox. And the one thing I did like about the Cardinals, right, is that they did have, those players that stayed with them, and they, similar to the Udonis Haslam's of the world for the Miami Heat, right? Sometimes it's good just to have that veteran presence that's been there for the winning teams to kind of bring in that perpetuity with regards to that winning culture that we had during the glory days, bridging that gap to the present day with like the Wainwrights, Molina. I know he's retired now and everything. So, but yeah, I do, at least I hope, at least for their sake, that they will bounce back a little bit. Who knows if they will be making the playoffs now? I'm not too sure about that. It's definitely, we'll see. I do like what I'm seeing from the Pirates. It does seem more sustainable. And maybe just this isn't the Cardinals' year for whatever reasons. So, but no, yeah. I think it really just goes to show like, hey, the importance it is to have some sort of continuity. I do think that the Cardinals eventually they will try to figure it out in terms of the outfield. Hopefully sooner rather than later for their sake, and then hopefully their pitching does become healthy. I definitely see that they have underperformed, and hopefully again for their sake that it averages out in their favor. But I do like to see the story that the Pirates are this season right now, and they just have a lot of young talent out there, and I think that's great for baseball too. Cruz, and you mentioned Hayes as well, and it's also awesome seeing just McCutcheon back in a Pirates uniform, and he's playing really well there too. So he's not just a mascot. He definitely is a contributor. He's kind of 36 years old, but his game definitely translates pretty well. I think for the longevity, he's always been a patient, balanced hitter. So I think he's been great for the culture over there at Pittsburgh, and has obviously contributed them to their lineup. So we'll love to see that, and hopefully, I don't know. All my picks have been wrong. I feel like you've been except the Rays. I think that was the only one. So
no, I mean I'm not going to take a lot of credit for. I mean, a lot of my picks at this point. I feel like Mariners, Angels have kind of stumbled out of the gate here. Cardinals are another team for sure, but it's been a little bit unpredictable, and I feel like that is in part kind of like the first month of baseball. But like the one thing you just can't do is like bottom out like the Sox have done, and kind of like the Cardinals are doing right now. It's just like you don't want to get in too big of a hole to kind of kick off your year. I mean, that's puts way too much pressure on the team to like now we have to go 30 games over 500 to at least compete. Like it's just not going to happen. So anyways, we'll see what happens with baseball, with all else. We'll check back in on this topic for sure as we move along here into the summer. But Wayne, I guess with that, let's dive into final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Final thoughts. I think I read some sort of report with regards to like male volunteership, actually. So I think I read something like only about 30% of dudes like will volunteer versus like 60% for women. So just something I noticed. Like I felt like I wanted to do something for the community of Chicago, the Uptown area. So there was a volunteership opportunity that somebody presented to me, the Chinese Mutual Aid Association, where they help out immigrant families with finding jobs, helping them out, helping their children figure out getting how to get jobs, college scholarships, or college in general, how to fund all of that. Talking about some things just about growing up in general. So I feel like seeing that and hearing about male volunteership for me, it was like oftentimes I think there's that saying, like, sometimes the best way to help yourself is to help others. So I feel like with this rise, I think, in male mental health issues, and I mean mental health just in general, but specifically like male mental health issues, I definitely see like hey, yeah, I think so if you're a reasonably like decent individual kind of going through a rut of some sort, like I definitely see some opportunities for volunteering and helping people out, because I think you'll be more astonished of how much you're able to accomplish, and how much you've accomplished yourself by helping some kids out that are kind of going through some similar issues maybe you did when you were growing up yourself. So that's all I had to say. I know I talked about blueberry muffins last week, so wanted to brighten it up a little bit here this week for my final thought.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. I feel like at times, the final thought can be used for our food portions of this podcast, but in the same sense, like I like talking about real world issues, or even just personally what we're trying to accomplish or what we're trying to go for here. And like I'm all for volunteering. I mean, I don't need to go on a long spiel. I did the Peace Corps for a couple of years, which in part lets you travel. It helps you build career skills. You get to go to a different culture and kind of learn language as well. So it is in a lot of ways can be viewed as like in part self-serving, or in part like a travel adventure in a lot of ways. But in the same sense, like you are volunteering 2 years of your life to doing, meaningful work on the ground in a nation that, may be developing, or, dealing with persistent poverty and things of that nature. So that experience really opened my eyes a lot. I feel like the best thing about volunteering is just like how grounded it really makes you feel, and like how much humility you have for the things that you've, been able to have access to. I mean, it's like, it's so overlooked in this country, and I'm not looking down on anybody who just doesn't go out and volunteer every weekend or anything like that, but it's it is so overlooked. And, oftentimes I feel like we match each other up with our peers in terms of like salary and career accolades and things like that. And it's just like, second you give back, or the second you kind of look at the other side of the coin, people that don't even have the means to get a good education or live in a hardship area, or maybe in a food desert, or maybe, with guns or, drug, situations all around them and such. And it's just like the second you get a chance to just see another side and like commit some time there and like build some relationships, I feel like you come out on the other end just a little bit more clear-minded and things like that. And, not a plug to say don't work for a for-profit company, or not to, go for the, shoot for the moon with your career and try to, make as much money as possible. But in the same sense, it's just like, yeah, I just feel like the effects and the rewards you get from stuff like that are, they're timeless. They stay with you forever, but they also really help the other people that, hopefully you're building that time with, sharing those skills or whatever else it could be in whatever you're accomplishing.
Yeah. And it's interesting with this idea, I guess, of modern day age of like hustle culture. And then, my Instagram feed, my TikTok feed is just filled with get rich schemes and, Gary V's and stuff like that. But like nobody talks about volunteering. Like it's not as cool as like Dogecoin going 100% in a month or something like that. Right. So, but at the same sense, like that's just, I think that's the change, or the change in mindset I'd like to see more so of people of, you're not just chasing the dollars. Obviously, hey, inflation can definitely suck and everything like that for sure. I'm not trying to discredit that, but if you're a reasonable means and such, like and you're able to take care of yourself, a decent amount, then I feel like, doing something like that for your community, helping each other out in that sense, that's just a big thing. I think one of the biggest things I hear with regards to, Chicago and all these, these kind of rampage or mayhems that were happening and stuff, like, there's, everybody always decries like, oh, there's a lack of like male figures or father figures and such like that in those communities. And it's like, well, why don't we set things up more? Like, it's always easy to complain about things, right? But it's harder to actually do something. So I'm like, all right, well, go do something. Just stop complaining about it, actually do something. And that's where I feel like social media sometimes, it's like, it just makes things so much easier to complain about, so much easier to like, all right, how can I make more money and, have that feed into my Instagram feed and stuff like that. And rather than, all right, how do I actually make a difference? How do I actually go to my neighborhood areas and talk to people and figure out what are their struggles and how can I help, or how can I educate them about things? So that's always where I feel like, there's a disconnect between that, what's happening on, the digital age right now, and, how people can actually help each other and impact their communities.
Yeah. It just seems like a vicious cycle. We work, we purchase, like we need more money to buy more goods, and we need to spend more time to do all that stuff. And it's just like, you get in this endless loop of, chasing the dollar, like you mentioned, or trying to impress other people or something like that. And it's like, I mean, I think the other good part about volunteerism is like, not only can you share your skills and your knowledge and stuff, but you learn so much about like what issues really exist and what people, truly need. And, if you're working with youth too, I mean, what you'll probably notice, if, like you're saying, there's not a lot of men representation, like in the volunteerism game, and at home, a lot of these kids may not have like the right role models, or even a role model that's male. And it's like these kids gravitate toward you if you're just a nice person, you're like having fun and just sharing laughs, or, playing some ball or something, like tossing the ball around, stuff. Like, you just start to realize that kids like start to gravitate toward that and toward you as a person. It's just like really, it could be really deep. It could be really fulfilling, in that sense. And I feel like, I feel like we've been so lucky. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of like your entire upbringing, but it sounds like you have a good, relationship with your dad and your family and stuff like that. So it's just like passing that along to somebody else and just being like, just a part of their process of growing up. Like, it means so much more, to them that you will never kind of realize or understand. But I feel like, it's a cool relationship to have. And, I'm just all for it. Like, if you're ever into, obviously finding new outlets for providing time or whatever else resources, like, dive into it. There's so many different options out there that, you can do, and you don't have to, commit to it for 10 years. You can do it for a while and then try something else or come back later. It's kind of however you want to structure it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, they give me free pizza too, every so often, or this previous week, they gave me some Wingstop actually. So I don't mind that. And but no, I think sometimes like, those things are definitely helpful for the soul, right? A little bit. So not as tangible, but yeah, you definitely feel better, I think, after that. So, I think that's my final thought. Would love to hear, what is your final thought, Pat?
Well, I don't have any good volunteerism, more deep perspectives to share here. So I'm just going to share a story from the weekend. I was pretty hungry driving back from a friend party, and an old friend of mine that I haven't seen in a long time just kind of smiled at me from the side of the road, and the purple lights were blaring pretty bright, and I just felt like I had to take a right hand turn. So I looped around and went into Taco Bell. It's been a long time. She and I have not seen each other for a while. I mean, she lives kind of across town at this point, and in general just don't have the opportunity as much as I used to. So I went in, I actually just, passed through the drive-through, whatever. And I just wanted to get all the best staple items. I wanted to get away from the value deals and stuff, because I just feel like they just toss a bunch of garbage in there and I don't need the soda. So I just went down the line. I'm just going to get the best Taco Bell items I can possibly get for me. And I ended up getting the grilled cheese steak burrito. I got the Crunchwrap Supreme, a cheesy gordita crunch, and then there was a chicken burrito with peppers or some sort of spicy sauce in it. So I was like, all right, I'm grabbing that thing too. And I roll around, and man, so similar to the Costco story from last week's episode, but man, my order, how much did my order cost? I'm telling you right now, after tax, how much did my order cost?
You were was it 5-6 items? I think I counted in my head.
There were cinnamon twists too. There's 5 items.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
5 items.
That's got to be what, 35 maybe? I don't know. Yeah, what was it?
All right, you overshot a bit, but it was $24 overall.
Okay.
But I was so I was thinking to myself, listen, I got 4 items, and that was a good amount of food. That filled me up for sure. It was just the specialty items, and then some cinnamon twists were at $1. So I was like, okay, $24 is what it costs to fill me up on some Taco Bell. Fast food's really taking an extreme turn here. And you've probably noticed this at your local Subway, where everything costs at least $10 now. And McDonald's, I don't even know if value meals exist anymore at the dollar level. I just feel like things have obviously exploded. And I'm not frequently eating fast food every week to kind of keep up with a lot of these changes. But when I did see $24 for my food, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Cause back in the day, $10 would go so far at that place. And now it's just here we are yet again. But what I was going to say also is just it was just so good to sit back and eat all those items and stuff. You kind of tell, the quality is run of the mill. I had to actually throw it in the microwave because it's a little bit, room temp at the time that I sat down for it. So but it does have so much nostalgia to it that, I used to go on the one Taco Bell that was on Fullerton, or I should say Southport. And no, I take the Clybourne and near Fullerton and Ashland stuff over in Chicago. Used to live right around there or whatever. But every weekend or 2-3 nights a week, sometimes in the summer, I'd hit that up and just sit out in the parking lot, have my TV and stuff. And, those days are long past me at this point, but in the same sense, it did bring back a lot of good feelings and vibes and stuff. Cause I was associate all my friend groups with going to Taco Bell late at night and just grabbing a bunch of stuff and hanging out and stuff. But anyways, Wayne, I wanted to just ask, I mean, that was a long rant kind of on pricing and the items themselves, but do you like Taco Bell at all? And if so, what are some of your top items, would you say?
I mean, I do like. It's been a while, but I do like the cinnamon twist. That's always been a staple for sure. I remember when they had, was it like the Mexican pizza, which I don't know how that would play around these days, but I do remember that. I do remember eating gorditas. After church, I would usually, there was a Taco Bell. I think it's like a Bueno beef now, but yeah, there was a Taco Bell close to where I live. So after church, me and the rest of my family, we would go from church all the way to that Taco Bell right there, and then bring it back home. And usually it was just like gorditas for everybody around, and then like maybe a soft taco here and there. But no, yeah, I think those were kind of the staples with Taco Bell for me. I think they had like a lemonade type of thing as well. I remember that drink. And I know they have like cantinas now, I think, right? They're trying to be cooler, a little bit more hipper and everything. Yeah, it's like, okay, let's cater to these millennials more of. I know that's become more prominent in Chicago. And I do recall, what did they have? Do you remember that there used to be that Taco Bell right across the street from Wrigley Field?
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you
dude,
remember
that
that
was a
one.
spot. That was a spot. That
That
was a good spot.
was like the end all be all of everyone's night, and that just like that was just a cesspool of all the wrongdoings of life, right there.
I've got the greatest story.
Yeah.
I got the greatest story from that Taco Bell. Okay, so anyways,
okay,
we got our
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we got our Taco Bell one night. We were out in Wrigleyville, like just at the bars, no game or anything like that, just out at the bars. And like we come back to this Taco Bell right over there, and it's late at night, and that place is pretty packed up. Like all the seats are pretty much booked and stuff. And we found a spot, and like we were kind of like facing over to another island of seats and stuff. And this girl was sitting down, and she was wearing this like really like nice party dress, or like just a really nice dress. And like this girl was like three sheets to the wind. Like she could barely like keep her eyes open. Like her eyes were like kind of flickering and stuff like while she was eating. But we were watching her because we were just like so like amused by her, because she just was obviously like completely smashed. But like she was eating this big grilled stuffed burrito, and like what she didn't realize is like as she's eating, like the bottom is leaking. So like she's just like eating this burrito or whatever, and like just globs of like ground beef and refried beans and like cheese is like pouring out the bottom and just getting all over her dress and stuff. Like we were just dying. Like we were just like absolutely dying, like pretending like we didn't see anything like when she was all said and done. But I don't even know like at the end of the night if she even like put it all together. Like I just think she probably found some sort of way to get home. Like hopefully she was safe or whatever, but like the next day probably did a lot of dry cleaning and Tide penning and all that other good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. Yeah, I wonder if she was like, you know what, this burrito's kind of lacking some meat in there. Something's missing here, but you know what? I'm drunk. I don't care. So yeah,
man. But yeah, Cantina. Yeah. Also, like I've been to one of the cantinas here in DC, and like it is a pretty fun time. Like you can spike like any of the drinks that you want to. Like I've done a Baja Blast, with a little tequila in it and stuff like that. And they have like all these touch pads, obviously, so you can just like customize every single thing in your order, which is kind of cool. But at the end of the day, it's Taco Bell. Like it's not obviously a fine dining or really elevated food experience, but it still has its place, really.
Yeah, have you had the Dorito one, the Dorito taco?
Yeah, the Doritos Locos tacos. I've definitely had those. I mean, I've tried the nacho cheese, and like I think they had a Cool Ranch one in the past or whatever. But the nacho cheese one's really good because it's just, I mean, who doesn't love like a little extra cheese on their shell and stuff like that? That was a slam dunk type innovation. But Cool Ranch, I can't even remember whether or not I liked it or not, but I think the dust kind of got lost in all the, the meat and the filling and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I think that was like, when we've talked about it before, like there's just novelty aspect, I feel like, because I think I had it once and I was like, all right, that's it. I can go about my life now and do like other things, So, but no, yeah, I definitely had to get that, but I feel like it was just a one and done for me.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, I feel like for this type of stuff, sometimes it's good to be one and done, or one and then wait a year and then try another one again, kind of deal. So it might be a good bridge of time before
Yeah.
I venture back over. But it's always nice to like check in on an old friend, see how they're doing, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely had a
You,
good
you,
like.
you ought to go to you ought to go to Taco Bell. Yeah, sorry, I was gonna say you ought to go to Taco Bell and then you ought to go to Costco afterwards, just to make sure you're not spending as much at Costco.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, both kind of took me by surprise, but again, like this gone on trend of like everything that we're seeing in any corporate owned food entity these days, it's like they're all just trying to, you know, keep pace with inflation, make sure profitability doesn't wane too much, make sure their execs are paid well. And it's like, at the end of the day, fast food is like now turning into like a sit down meal with tip, like you're not finding discounts or values going to these stops anymore. And I mean, that's all fine. But at the end of the day, for a lot of these corporations are going to realize like folks are going to start hitting, food stands or food trucks, or they're going to make their own food at home, or, they're going to find that mom and pop sit down diner that's just going to, price fairly or something of the sort. But yeah, I mean, the stuff just doesn't seem really sustainable. You know, in the distant future, especially with like health trends too. Like I just don't see these guys holding up, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely. I think just getting more of those single person meals from like Jewel and Mariano's right now. So not so bad. They actually have some good poke bowls. Like I don't have to it was like two poke bowls for like $20. Like that's better than like door dashing or from other spots too. So and yeah, the rice is decent. So that's something where I feel like there's probably gonna be more of a trend there. So yeah, I don't know if there's any data on that, but that definitely is, I think, where I'm going at more.
Yeah, I mean, with remote work, flex work for most adults too, it's like, I mean, I'm making 4 days of meals at home for the most part. I mean, even on the day that I go in the office, I have one office, one takeout lunch a week, and that's pretty much it. And come weekend time, like we blend it up. Like we may make food at home, but in the same sense, like maybe get delivery from a local family restaurant, or in the same sense, like do some carry out or dine in when we can. So it's like, man, I don't know. At some point, like, I'm just not driving through a drive through anymore and, taking it to go. Like I think a lot of our families did growing up for us, like I frequented fast foods like so much as a kid that, I mean, I probably have like, like my body, like it's probably so damaged from all the junk that I ate growing up and stuff that like at this point I'm just trying to like even it all out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's right. But hey, if Warren Buffett, right, just eats nothing but McDonald's every day, apparently, like, yeah, why not? And there's like 90-year-old smokers out there. I feel like, yeah, we're okay. So.
Yeah, his personal assistant's probably like an MD. And he's just like, don't worry, I'll take care of you, Warren, if anything happens. But take these drugs while you keep eating those sausage biscuits every morning with coffee. So
yeah,
but no, good for him. Good for Warren. He's a
for sure.
humble dude on a side note. But anyways, good times. Feel like a well-rounded episode. Obviously, some fun final thoughts, and also one that's more on the personal side, which I always appreciate. But like, subscribe on YouTube. Leave us a review if you're on our audio podcasts, and follow along on Instagram for any real stories to come. And we'll catch you guys next time.